Skerrit. And of course, this interview has been simulcast on all other radio stations. And we join Curtis Matthew in Studio 2. Good morning to you, Curtis.
Good morning to you, Stephen Dangleben, and good morning to listeners all around Dominica and the rest of the Caribbean. We welcome you to this interview with the Prime Minister of Dominica. With me is Miss Idona John Baptist from Mappin. And the Prime Minister now will make a statement and we will continue the interview. Prime Minister, good morning to you.
Morning to you, Curtis, and of course, Ms. John Baptist, and to all of the listeners, resident here in Dominica, or citizens, our foreign aid workers who are here, and of course to our friends and families in the diaspora. As we approach the Christmas and Yuletide season, Dominicans are confronted with the age-old dilemma of determining whether their cup is half full or half empty. Do we shake our heads, wring our hands, and wonder, how could this have happened to us? Or do we celebrate the fact that we are bouncing back from a debilitating experience and that the world is rooting for us and we must not fail them? Ladies and gentlemen, friends, our frame of mind at this Christmas time will be influenced in large measure by our attitude. Is our cup half full or is it half empty? Do we have something to eat or do we have next to nothing to eat? Did we get enough for Christmas or did we get something for Christmas? Will we dwell on the fact that our homes have been destroyed, or do we give thanks that at least we have a roof over our heads and that the prospects for something more permanent are very encouraging? I would like from the outset this morning, to appeal to my brothers and sisters in Dominica to work hard at formulating the right attitude to our acknowledgement, if not celebration, of Christmas. We all know and are familiar with the biblical significance and the background to the celebration of Christmas. But for us in Dominica, it has always been more than about the birth of Jesus Christ. It has always been and must remain a period of love and fellowship. In the recent past, our celebrations of love and fellowship were decorated with lights, music, costumes, even hams, turkeys, spirits, and the like. We traveled abroad, and our friends and relatives came to visit. We exchanged gifts and we looked forward to receiving some in return. We posted selfies and other pics of our glorious culinary creations, and generally we celebrated in fine Dominican style. But ladies and gentlemen, friends, these were all mere expressions of that love and fellowship which remain at the core of our celebrations. Those value-added benefits will be absent and in short supply for many of us this Christmas. But I urge you to ensure that the love and fellowship remain. We may not have the trimmings of the season, but we must never lose sight of the reason for the season. This weekend, as we go into overdrive with our preparations, let us look next door. Let us gaze across the street. Let us reflect on the colleague who lost a loved one on September 18th. Let us think about the relative or friend who lost a house and is still housed in a shelter. Let us think of the senior citizen who is living all alone. Did their burial arrive? Did they get a hamper? Have they had the energy to go collect their pension or government subsidy? Will they have a hot meal on Monday? My dear people, don't let us guess about these things this Christmas. I want each of us to make it our business to go find out. If the Spirit bids you to go check on someone, get up from where you are and go check on them. If you have chicken and pork on your plate this Christmas, think of the family down the road that has neither chicken nor pork. This is what I want Christmas 2017 to be all about. We have all experienced and enjoyed the trimmings of the season. Let us not drill down and embrace the reason. Let us now drill down and embrace the reason for the season. I do not want to talk this morning about what's not working or about what needs to be done in 2018. There will be a time and place for that. I am concerned this morning that the many thousands of us who have decided to remain in Dominica and rebuild this country must use this period to consolidate and recharge our batteries. We have had a rough 2017. No one knows what awaits in 2018. But Christmas this year must find us as one loving, caring, and sharing people. This is no place in Christmas 2017 for race, creed, gender, or political persuasion. I want to call a halt today to all these considerations. I want a political ceasefire in Dominica this Christmas. It doesn't matter whether your neighbor is red, blue, green, or pink. Reach out to them and spread the spirit of Christmas. Today and tomorrow, as you shop for your children, buy an extra gift for Child X in the community. You may not now know who Child X is, but trust me, by Monday evening, you will. When you cook on Sunday night or Monday morning, cook a little extra. Be in a position to have something extra just in case. Before I entertain your questions and comments, I want to say a little something also to our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. You have been, for the main part, constructive and cooperative. You have risen to the occasion. You have been generous and you have been sensitive to the plight of your brothers and sisters back home. I want to urge you this Christmas season to let the spirit continue. Call a relative, call a friend, call a neighbor, and ask to speak to someone down the street who may not have the use of a phone. They can take the phone to the person. They can arrange for you to call back in 10 minutes. Hearing your voice will mean the world to your mommy, your auntie, your friend, and relative. Also, my brothers and sisters, there are scores, indeed hundreds of foreign aid workers who are spending this Christmas with us, away from their families and loved ones. That's the height of their commitment to duty and love of this country. I want you to reach out to them. Don't leave them in the hotel or guest house or other makeshift accommodation. Invite them to your home, to your community, to your family and friends get together. They're helping to rebuild Dominica, and this is the least we can do at this time to say a heartfelt thank you. So, my dear people, Christmas is on Monday. I like the feeling I get as I move around the country. I'll be headed to some of the healthcare institutions tomorrow, myself and my wife. And I look forward to meeting with and having fellowship with as many of the sick and shut-ins as possible. I will do my part as Prime Minister, and I want each and every one of you to do your part as proud citizens of our beloved Dominica. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit. So that's the opening statement from the Prime Minister. As he said earlier, he will be taking some questions. Iduna is along with me. Good morning to you again.
Good morning, Curtis, and good morning to Mr. Skerrit, as well as all the listeners of DBS Radio.
I was going to say I will take the first knock. Prime Minister, I want a political ceasefire in Dominica this Christmas. Can you explain?
The world has become highly partisan charged. It's not only Dominica, it's the world over. And what I would like for us to do is to set aside these considerations this Christmas and to embrace each other as brothers and sisters, as one big Dominican family. So if you're red and you have a blue neighbor next door, that should not be a consideration for reaching out to the person. We should set this aside and reach out to the person, and vice versa. If you are a Protestant, as we call them, and your neighbor is a Catholic, that shouldn't be a consideration to reach out to your neighbor. You see? So this is what we're saying this Christmas. This Christmas, because Hurricane Maria caused all of us in the country to come to a state of humility. And we have to be careful as citizens, as a country, that we do not lose sight of the lessons which Maria taught all of us, with no exception.
Mr. Prime Minister, as you speak about humility, I really wanted to understand, and I know that the public is interested to know what's your situation been like since Hurricane Maria.
Well, I always tell people I'm the least of the apostles. I do not like talking about myself and those who know me and I always have the view in life, not since I became Prime Minister, it's always been my view about life, that somebody's situation is worse than mine. You understand? And I believe it is Shakespeare who once said, and I need to go back and read my literature. So, but I believe it's Shakespeare who once said that, look, what's to the effect? I complained because I had no shoes until I met a man with no legs. So my situation really is pale in comparison to the situation of many hundreds of Dominicans today. As everybody knows, where I resided as Prime Minister, the roof went very early. It might have been one of the first roofs to go in the country. It was not it was a really horrifying experience. And I always keep telling people, I thank God that my family was not in the house with me at the time, because had they been, my two little children would have been on the bed, and I saw the roof caved in onto the bed that night, or they would have been where they normally watch television and play, and that's the second place the roof caved in. So I thank God for life, and I thank God that my children, myself, are alive. But I joke with people and I say I'm living in a shelter, and that's what it is. And I'm not sure how long I'll be there. I suspect I'll be there for some time, knowing how the government system works. So I think I'll be in this shelter for a couple of years. That's the conference room of the State House. And as you know, the conference room still was not configured or constructed as a dwelling. It was conference facilities. So there were no provisions for shower and for bedrooms and for those kind of things. So we're trying to see how we can have it remodeled to at least make it comfortable. Yeah.
Very well, sir.
It's just about 6 o'clock on the morning of September 19th. and you're up at that time very early, and you've seen the destruction around. What are you saying to yourself as Prime Minister of Dominica with widespread destruction around the country?
Well, clearly I said to myself, we have a huge task in our hand. When I walked from Mount Daniel, where you would have expected that the houses would have been properly constructed, and and you saw the destruction there. What raced to my mind is the Kalanago territory. What raced to my mind is the eastern villages. What raced to my mind is places like Campbell. Raced to my mind places like Soufriere and Scottshead, with the sea surges on there, and the southeastern and also the eastern Grand Bay areas, Pishla. So I try to figure what is the situation in the rest of the country, taking into consideration what would have happened in places like Mount Daniel and going up to Goodwill and Santa Roma. I recognize that the country is in a serious problem. I mean, from the moment my roof started to go, I recognized with difficulties, and I said to some friends, my only hope and prayer is that it is only touching a part of Dominica and not the whole of Dominica. If it goes across Dominica, then we will have a very dire situation in the morning of the 19th. And unfortunately, that's what the results were.
Mr. Prime Minister, even if someone was to say that, let me put myself in your shoe to try to understand how you feel as the Prime Minister having to head a country that has suffered widespread devastation, I don't think that anybody can totally relate to how you feel. What sort of mindset were you in, having known that you have to try to rebuild again?
Well, I mean, you're right. It's you do not. No one knows what a prime minister has to deal with, or what he goes through in normal or difficult circumstances. You only know of this if you are the prime minister, and this is why sometimes people have to appreciate that they may have a perspective, they may have a view, they may have a particular position, but they do not have to deal with the issue themselves. It is like a man is batting, one ball left, one more run to go, one wicket to fall, but you in the stands with a glass of black label in your hand, and you want to tell the guy what he should do. You tell the bowler what to bowl, how to bowl, tell the batsman how to bat and what to do, and so on. And should he take a leg guard or center guard? What he should do, and so forth. But there's anxiety within that person who has to bat this one ball, and this person who has to bowl this one ball, and it is for the tournament. It is for the tournament, and so it is not an easy task. And for the last several months, as you know, I've been in and out of the country, traveling different parts. Traveling is not easy. People believe that I don't like to travel. I do it because I must do it, and so you don't sleep much because you either be in a hotel or meeting or on a plane. Sometimes I have to go through, in a matter of 2 days, maybe 4 different time zones, having different engagements in different time zones. So your body never gets acclimatized to the situation where you could sleep. But the fact that so many citizens rely and are depending on the government to help them out of the situation, one can appreciate the enormity of the responsibility. But we thank God that He's been good to us, and we also thank God for the many benefactors and friends out there who have been coming to our aid and who have made commitments to coming to our aid. And I am very hopeful. But it is not an easy task. Plus, you have a family, little children. So you have big children who are at university and who are married and so on. My last little daughter is 2 years old, and my son is 4 years old. and sometimes you don't see them for weeks, not days, weeks. So that can be also very difficult, because at this age, you have to be there physically.
There were some reservations about your subsequent trip to the UN General Assembly. Some people had their views on having left Dominica a few days after. Any regrets?
Have you asked those persons? Do they now have a different perspective on the initial position? There are people who criticize me for that because they had particular selfish positions. But when I woke up Thursday morning, very early, and I was having a cup of coffee about 3:30 in the morning, thereabout, and studying the situation, one, you have no communication with the rest of the world in any significant way. Many people in the world did not really know what was happening in Dominica because there was no communication outside of the few pictures that were out there. Because remember, this is Tuesday and this is Thursday. You see, we did not know what was happening in many of the villages, most of us, And where best could you have drawn to the world's attention the situation in our country, Dominica? And I thought that it would be in the country's interest to go to the United Nations. And I left Dominica literally with a pair of jeans and a shirt and a pair of shoes, and when I got to New York, very late on Friday, I bought clothes to go to address the United Nations, from a boxer to an undershirt to a tie and everything else, a pair of shoes. So I left Dominica with no clothes. And I believe that this intervention by Dominica at the United Nations at that time is what brought the world's attention to our situation. And immediately after I addressed the General Assembly, the Secretary General of the United Nations asked to see me. I went to his office with his entire cabinet present. And a few days later, I got a call saying that the Secretary General would visit Dominica. And the international press captured the statement, and that was transmitted in literally every corner of the world. And I believe that, literally hundreds of millions of people read this speech and caused a number of them to move to help Dominica and to encourage the governments and the employers to help our country. So I don't regret these things. In leadership positions, you don't necessarily regret. If you make an error, you try to fix it or you try to avoid it in the future. But you take a decision with the information that you have at the particular time. And I believe that decision to travel to United Nations was very helpful, and I got facilitated. A friend with an airplane provided transportation to New York and back to Dominica. It was very gracious of him. So, we're very grateful for that. Otherwise, I would not have the opportunity to get to New York in time to address the United Nations. But this was, in my mind, and in the minds of many independent observers, a very important tactical decision on the part of the government to go and address the United Nations at this time. And I think that's where because you had a situation in Puerto Rico, you had a situation in St. Martin, you had a situation in Myanmar, you had a situation in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and obviously it will always be the intention or the thinking of the U.S. press to focus on their territories, their countries. You had a situation in Florida. So there are many other things happening and taking place around the world at the same time. And as a result of that, we saw a lot more coverage from CNN and Al Jazeera, RT, and all of the international media and regional media started covering Dominica's situation and zooming in on Dominica.
Sir, you keep speaking about government's willingness to assist people whose homes were affected. But how realistic is that, given the fact that Dominica is facing right now $1.3 billion in damage and losses Of course, that's according to the World Bank.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge task, but we have to look at it from a different perspective. There are many citizens in Dominica. If the government does not intervene in helping them, they will be in the same situation for years to come. And therefore it is the responsibility of the state to pay attention to the vulnerable people in our society, and we'll be providing for them. You also have a situation with many of our senior citizens, or many of our senior citizens who are in their 70s, 80s, retired 30 years ago, 25 years ago. They would have gotten sick, used their little gratuity. They had to make a decision between an insurance policy over food, over their weekly supply of medication. And they decided, obviously, like most of us would do, we would focus on food and our weekly medication. So they're not insured. You also have a situation too where many of us would have been insured. We were not properly advised, or we did not properly advise ourselves on insurance policies and insurance legislation and insurance practices. So we most times would cover the value of our mortgage and not the value of our home sometimes. So our home would be valued $700,000, but we were only the bank $400,000, so we insured for $400,000. Now the insurance comes and says, yes, okay, you need $100,000 to fix your roof and to put your windows, but you were underinsured, and therefore what the check they will give you will be based on what is the current value of your property and not what you were insured for. And therefore, when you expect $100,000, you will be getting $40,000, and you already cash trap. Your take-home pay is a few $100s. There's no bank is going to give you an additional loan. So what we're seeking to do as a government is to look at the situation from different perspectives. One, there'll be people who will need a home from the government because they will never be able to build the homes. Because what these hurricanes, what these storms expose is the vulnerabilities of many families. People don't go build in a ravine because they want to build in a ravine or they love to live in the ravine. People go ravine because it's wasteland. Nobody is taking the land. They have a family, they want to put a little shelter over the family's head, and they build a little house. They got a little sheet of plywood, they little old galvanized, they knock it together. They're not wetting, they're fine until a storm happens, until a disaster like this happens. And we need to provide for these people. So you have this category. Your second category of people who, the senior citizens in particular, who have no insurance whatsoever, whose homes got affected. Because of the age, they will not be able to get a loan from the banks to fix it. They have no children on earth who can help them. They're suffering from one ailment or the other, and the government will have to come to assist them in covering their homes and fixing their homes. Then you have those who may have insurance, who are working people, but their insurance is not covering the full extent of their reconstruction. They may have a difficulty in contracting the 7% loans at the bank or 7.25% loans at the bank. So what we're going to be doing for a lot of these people is to put monies at the aid bank and the government housing loan board at a 2% interest rate, give you a decent grace period, and not take into consideration the tightness of your take-home pay, but facilitate you in the process. So we're looking at that. And our hope is that those of us who receive insurance money, that we use it to fix our homes. Do not be tempted to go and replace your car. The screen break, you put a little plastic over it for the time being, it can drive. You see, there's no time for mark grips. There's no time for those fancy things. We now have to deal with the basics, the fundamentals of life. You understand? Do not be tempted to go and buy a TV because the TV cheap now when you have no lights at your home. You see, wait for that. Let's buy a window instead. Let's buy a door. You see, so these are things that we have to look at as citizens. But we will try our best, as you know, we have been articulating. We've already signed off an agreement for the procurement of 1,000 homes. We're also looking at the new development in Roseau, development in Portsmouth, the relocation of many homes in Culibistry, some in Collyho, several homes in Pishley, Maranatha Square, entire Maranatha Square has to be relocated. In some places in Point Michel, we have to build homes in Soufriere, Point Michel. So we're going to build homes in a number of parts of the country using different methods of financing.
You mentioned lights a while ago. What is your own view on these entities, the Wascos, Domlec, and these entities in Dominica as the country rebuilds after Hurricane Maria?
I think so far they have done the best they could possibly do in the circumstances, with the help of some external friends. Clearly, in the case of the Wasco, the government will have to look at beefing up the Wasco's competencies in terms of engineering and engineering in hydraulics and water systems, not only civil engineering, but because we're going to have for a long-term look at the issue of the sustainability of these water systems and to make them more resilient. So we are clearly working with the British government and also some friends in Martinique who will be assisting us in the engineering capacities of DOASCO to look at the water system. So what DOASCO is really doing is a quick fix situation to allow us to have access to pipe-borne water. But as part of the building greater resilience, building a more sustainable society, we'll be looking at the water systems and the designs of these water systems and the technology being employed in water systems to address this. Clearly, Domlec has done his best. I have the greatest of admiration for Mrs. Mackenzie and the team. The leadership that she has shown, is exceptional. But I'm speaking from an observer standpoint, not having any internal knowledge of Domlec, but when you are a manager, there's certain limitations that you would have, unless you're the shareholders. I think the shareholders need to articulate a clearer vision for the restoration of electricity in Dominica. And what is the situation now? What is the optimal human resources you need to get lights back into the country quicker? You see, and I think these things need to be articulated to the country, to the consumers of Dominica. Not just saying to us, okay, we have connected this community, but what are the challenges that you're experiencing? And how do you see yourselves addressing these challenges? Are you putting enough money on the restoration to have a shorter time frame for the restoration of electricity in many parts of the country? So these are the things I think the government certainly will be putting forward to Domlec in the new year. And also we've been discussing them extensively about the new energy mix in Dominica. And because you see, if Domlec is not able to articulate a clearer vision and to capture what the government is seeking to achieve with 85% renewable energy in our country and going forward at minimum with geothermal and solar, we run the risk of many of us who may have the means of pursuing our own generation. And in my respectful view, that is not in the best interest of the country, because we're a small generating capacity demand, and if all of us were to get away from the grid, especially the larger consumers, it's not going to redound to the benefit of those of us who are small consumers, and therefore time is of the essence in respect to the restoration of electricity in the short term. And time is also of the essence in the future of energy generation and distribution in Dominica. But I intend to meet with the principals of Domlec after the Christmas to discuss these things with them. But Ambassador Henderson, who has been exceptional in assisting, because I assigned him to coordinate the matters relating to energy on behalf of the government. So he's been having extensive discussions with a wide range of stakeholders, including Domlec and Imera, on the present situation, also the future situation. We ourselves, we are also engaging some entities who we're seeking to see whether they could provide Domlec with low interest loans, less than 1%, less than 2%. To make it cheaper for them to. So we, in fact, will support these initiatives. We engage in the World Bank on renewables. We engage in the European Investment Bank on the distribution lines, and whatever we can do to facilitate Domlec in these matters, the government is certainly on board with that.
the food relief programs we saw after Hurricane Maria, there were some concerns and there were some good things about the program. In your view, if you were to do it again, you would do some things differently?
The initial criticisms of the program, look, I mean, let's face it, the entire country is affected. Access to communities have been hampered. You could only get to some communities by boat. You could only get to many communities by helicopter. There are no storage facilities in those communities. Every package had to be hand-delivered to people's homes. It wasn't a Hurricane David situation where we had to go to certain designated points every week to pick up our supplies. I remember as a little boy, every Thursday was a distribution day for vehicles. So people would line up outside the police station with policemen there, and you sign and you receive your package and you go home, and you butter oil and those corned beef hash and these things, you know. So it's a different situation. So you had very few volunteers because everybody's still in shock. People in days, people in a days for several weeks. People still in days today. One day, look at the homes and it's still on tarpaulin, and boy, where I get the money from? And and my son is in school, and my husband is sick and blind at the home. What do I do? So there were challenges, in that. But I think as the days went by, and people started to come forward to volunteer, because in the initial days you were getting the supplies in big bags, so a big bag of flour, a big bag of sugar, a big bag of rice. Then you needed people to package those. You understand? You had to package them in individual packages, 2-pound bags, 1-pound bag, and get them in bags and bring to people. So you had those issues there. People had to be walking to several miles to get to people because there were still electrical lines, poles across the road, and trees and so forth, mudslides, landslides. But I think we're able to get things under control, put some structures in place, and we're able to address the situation. But there's nothing that you could have changed back in the initial days that would have made any significant difference, because you had no control over the situation, really. But as the days go by, we're able to get that kind of structure in place. In some communities, you have to, it was very difficult, very, very difficult. And the government itself started bringing in supplies and started improving on the quality of the supplies and the packaging. So instead of bringing the big bags, we would have brought in 2-pound bags and 5-pound bags. So you just give somebody, 2-pound bag of rice, and so it was easier to package than the initial stages where you're getting the big bags of flour that you have to repackage and so forth.
Mm-hmm. So in retrospect, what lessons have you learned from this situation?
The fact is, even if you had, leading up to the hurricane, all of the systems were in place, but certainly compromised by the enormity of the destruction. You understand? The enormity of the destruction. This wasn't a tropical storm Maria situation where a large part of the country wasn't impacted. You see, it's a situation where every home got impacted, every street got impacted, every community, every hamlet, every cranny in Dominica was impacted, every business in Dominica was impacted. You see, so I think in the broader context of things, what we're doing in terms of the rebuilding efforts is to have regional hurricane centers. We will not have the resources to build the optimal hurricane shelter in every community, but build regional hurricane shelters. So in these regional hurricane shelters, we will have mattresses in those areas, chainsaws in those areas, food supplies in those areas, have storage, water storage capacities there with tens of thousands of gallon capacities, so that in the event we have the situations that you would have a regional center in Marigot that could possibly cover Wesley and so forth. You have one in Castle Bruce that could cover the Kalinago territory and those areas. I have one in Laplin that could cover Laplin and Grand Fond, these communities. I have one in Portsmouth. You have a couple in the Roseau areas and so forth. Granby. So this is part of the government's strategic planning going forward in terms of our own preparedness for such disasters in the future. So that if Granby is cut off, Granby has at least 20,000 gallons of water that it can use. It has X amount of supply of rice and beans and so forth that it could use to distribute in the community, so that they don't have to wait for a small helicopter to bring in supplies for a huge community like Granby and Marigot and these communities and so forth.
Your government has announced a decision to conduct a review of the Dominica police force. Why is that necessary at this time?
Well, it is necessary, whether it's this time or next time, but it is absolutely necessary that we have this comprehensive review. And we started, as you know, we have allowed the persons appointed to do the review, to interview and to speak with a wide cross-section of the society. So they had the opportunity to speak to a number of people in the private sector, the religious community. The leader of the opposition was down, and a number of other stakeholders. So that's the first phase of it, to look at the Dominica police force. What are the limitations there? What are the challenges there? What are the strengths there? What are the weaknesses there? So that those issues can be addressed. Where there are strengths, build upon them. Where there are weaknesses, seek to strengthen them. Where there are shortfalls and gaps, seek to have them filled. So that process has started. It is not completed yet. We've seen aspects of the report so far, and I can say to you that I had discussions with the Minister for National Security 2 days ago, and we're going to put some of those actions into gear immediately. We are going to enter into a strategic partnership also. It's in discussion with the Jamaica Defence Force to assist with training in a wide range of areas. We're looking forward to signing some form of agreement with the government of Jamaica on that. This is something that has happened in the past, in the 80s, so it's nothing new. And then also, critically, we are going to have some kind of review as to what went wrong on September 19th. Why wasn't there sufficient coverage by the police on September 19th? And to ensure that, one, we can know what went wrong, if anything, and what needs to be done to avoid something like that happening in the future. Okay, so there'll be different aspects of the review of the police force and the security of the state.
These recommendations, you say the government will take on board?
Yeah. Once they're practical, I cannot give a commitment that we will take every recommendation because I haven't seen them. I haven't seen all of them. There are one or two that I have seen that we are starting to work on, and the minister will give effect to this in the next few days after Christmas. But the idea is to ensure that we can provide what needs to be provided to address the situation in the country. Yeah.
Okay, I'd just like to remind listeners that they're listening to a live on-air interview with Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit.
From people on Facebook.
As well as we're on live on Kyrie FM and Vibes Radio as well. But Mr. Prime Minister, speak about the review of the Dominica Police Force. Of course, this is an issue that came out of the Dominica Business Forum's position paper that they've submitted to government. Have you paid any attention to that?
To what?
The Dominica Business Forum's position paper and some of their concerns coming out of Hurricane Maria's impact.
Yeah, we've received it. We've had an occasion to meet with the Dominica Business Forum. Like I said, we are more than willing to receive any and all suggestions. Obviously, I said, this have to be reviewed, this have to be analyzed, and to see the practicality of some of them. Where some of them are practical, we will certainly implement them. So, but I said to you that we acted upon this review of the police force way in advance of any recommendation come from anybody else. Yeah.
The Build Back Better concept, as outlined by the government of Dominica, focuses on climate resilience to a large extent.
Yeah.
Does one get the impression that Dominicans have accepted that concept, and as a result, the government is very confident about it going forward? the idea of climate resilience?
And the question is, I mean, why would anybody be opposed to that in the first place? Why would you be against ensuring that you build greater resilience within your infrastructure, the construction of homes, the construction of bridges, the construction of drainage systems, causing agriculture to be more sustainable and resilient to natural disasters, ensuring that if a hurricane were to visit us in the future, we will not be out of communication rates to the world for so many days, and ensuring that all our telecommunication lines are placed in underground ducts. And if we had, for example, all our telephone lines or electrical lines, or most of them at least in communities underground, the country would have been back up with lights completely. And this is what we were seeking to do with the Roads Enhancement Project, because part of the Roads Enhancement Project, if you look at the literature of it, and if you look at the designs of these pieces of infrastructure, was to get all of the telephone lines underground, all of the electrical lines underground, improve on the drainage system, improve on the river defense systems. As you saw, the bridge withstood the impact of Hurricane Maria and the river defense walls, because the bridge was built take into consideration greater resilience, take into consideration the hydraulic systems, hydrology situation of the Rosa River. And therefore, water could go over it, water could go below it, but it did not cause any blockage and damage to the community. Unlike the one by the Windsor Park Stadium, which is way too low, and which may have been responsible for a lot of the flooding which took place in Lower Rosa. And this bridge has to be reconstructed to take into consideration the issue of resilience. So we in the new year, we will be sharing with the Dominican population in greater detail the various components and various aspects of the building greater resilience and creating a more sustainable livelihoods for us in Dominica. The fact is, the issue of climate change is real and present with us. And the scientists are saying that storms are going to become more frequent and more ferocious. We have no control over this. What we have control over is, as human beings, is how we construct, how we build. And this is why, even with regards to housing, we will be bringing in, and where do you build? How do we build? We'll be bringing in some experts who will go to various, especially vulnerable communities, to advise us on zoning of those communities. To say, look, you cannot build in this zone. No form of construction whatsoever. You understand? So there are a number of things that we're looking at, but certainly I would hate to think that any sensible person in our country who would be opposed to building greater resilience, because that's the only way to go. Even though all of us, every one of us citizens who own a home, are now looking to see, well, why should I build a concrete roof? Because the only place I survived the hurricane is in the toilet where we had the concrete roof. And those who had concrete roofs had no impact except for the couple of windows and so forth. So people are saying, boy, we were importing these windows from all over the place, but the Chinese windows survived and so forth. So we've all seen, we all know in our mind, in the Building Back Better, want to build with greater resilience. So look at it from our own perspective. You understand? And this is what we're talking about. Our health centers, our health systems. Next time a hurricane like this happens, God forbid, we should not have a situation where in our main hospital we cannot provide basic services. No lights, no water. That shouldn't happen in the future. We need to build smart and climate resilient health centers and hospitals. Our schools, we need to ensure that our schools are more resilient to these natural disasters. And so these are things that we'll be looking at in our whole building. I'm sure you're hearing people on the streets and on the radio programs. Everybody talk about 24 gauge galvanized. Everybody talking about the quality of the material. Why you don't buy this cushion, fellas have to come back to it, because and you're gonna see very soon many of us will have our own testing devices when we go and we buy materials, we need to show that the blocks have the PSI that is required, that the aggregates are cleaned properly, you know, mud in it, and the sand and so forth. So even at our own little station, we are now looking at the issue of building back better and building back with greater resilience.
Talk, Mr. Prime Minister, to the situation in Petite-Savanne as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
How do we move forward as a community in Petite-Savanne?
Well, as what we have done, and the project as we recommend, is to build homes, and even these homes how we were building in for the people in Petite-Savanne at Belbishop took into consideration the realities in our country. So we were building homes much better than we were building, and we've been building. So we'll continue these homes, and those homes will be made available to the people of Petite-Savanne. We also going to increase the number of homes there to make additional accommodation for some residents in Grand Bain, Pichelin, who will need, and Fonseca, who will need more homes. So we're increasing the number of homes up in Belville-Chopin to make further allowance for many more families who would have to be relocated from Pichelin and Fonseca and these communities. So that is going to continue. I think going forward, the country needs to have a very mature and serious discussion on enacting legislation that would strengthen the hands of the planning department in declaring areas that are not suited for construction, and ensuring that there are penalties, there's significant penalties to deter people from doing that. But it is important for the state to ensure that it has the capacity to provide for these vulnerable families alternative options.
Going forward, would one expect construction to go on in Petite-Savanne? Because from what we know, there are people living there at the moment.
The people in Petite-Savanne? Yeah, well, I'm saying that going forward, because as it is now, there's no legislation really that can pull them out from there. I'm going forward, you will have to put legislation in there. Like once you declare an area a disaster zone or a zone not for habitation, then you have a challenge. Okay? The other issue on somebody's raising there on Facebook about how are we going to help the poor people to cover their roofs and where they have no source of income to do so. A simple response to this question by the person on my Facebook page is that the government will cover the full cost of this, material and labor, for this poor family. So we are very committed to that. And we'll be working with the manufacturers of galvanized in the region who are prepared to come to set up shop here. We'll provide the concessions for them to setting up shop. There's a local guy who is doing some galvanized here. We'll also be helping him to build capacity. So I'm hoping to meet with him after Christmas to speak to him about these challenges and how we can help him build capacity. We're working with major suppliers of building materials, because one of the challenges we have there is a supply. So we're even looking at the government bringing in and to see to what extent the government can also supply the local suppliers there. Because some of the suppliers may want to bring in kind of materials, but they don't have the resources sometimes to bring the extent of it. But you also have a greater challenge where, because you have all of this hurricane rebuilding in Florida, in Texas, in the U.S. Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, Anguilla, St. Martin, Puerto Rico, building materials are becoming in short supply. You understand? And the cost will increase, because with demand and supply, this is capitalist system, you will have a situation where the demand is huge, the supply is low, prices go up. And how do you mitigate against that, especially for the poor people whom the person is talking about there?
Mr. Prime Minister, of course, you've been endorsing this idea of Dominica becoming the first climate resilient country, even before Hurricane Maria. Sure. Now, how are you going to rope in the citizens of this country into this idea? Have you thought of that?
Well, they'll be part of the process. I mean, we will have consultations with them, as we've started already, as a matter of fact. We've started the consultations. So the idea is every one of us in Dominica will have been consulted on one way or the other, and we would have the necessary documentation that the government has in terms of when we say we're building greater resilience in agriculture, what do we mean? What are we going to be doing? What kind of crops are we going to be growing? In which areas will be supporting those growing of crops. That's one issue. The second issue you have is, in, for example, rebuilding. Which codes are you following? Giving people a detail and so on, designs and the codes, and so there are different elements of it, and of course we'll be sharing that with the public. Somebody's asking whether we're going to be issuing bonds to raise funds. I can say to the person that we in fact issued a 91-day $20 million US Treasury bill in the month of October. And it was hugely successful. It was, as a matter of fact, oversubscribed. I believe that these are kind of situations we will use to raise required financing from time to time. On the issue of long-term bonds, we have not made a determination on that, but it's something that we will look at in terms of raising financing.
As part of your travels after Hurricane Maria, you visited students of UWI campuses in Barbados and Trinidad, is it? And you made certain commitments to them, telling them that essentially government would not turn its back on them. What about our students who are studying further afield?
Yeah, I have met with students studying in Barbados and in Trinidad. And we've also been in touch with students studying in the United States and elsewhere. And it's a firm commitment we give. We do not want any of our children to abandon their studies because their parents have found themselves in a certain predicament as a result of the hurricane and would have to terminate their studies. The majority of people studying overseas now are under some way or shape or form financed by the government, whether full finance or partial finance. And we will do everything possible to ensure that we can provide the financing to take care of these people. We'll also be giving students an additional grant to meet to purchase food, and in some cases to pay the rent for a period of time until their parents can take up the slack. But we do not want, because the fact is Dominica is going to need is trained people now more than ever, and we should not. In terms of education, we should never compromise the training and continued education of our people. It's going to be very critical.
You have stated that
somebody recently showed the reports on the import duties. These are still in effect. It's for 6 months from the 1st of October. That you don't pay VAT and import duty on a wide range of goods. When it comes to the end of the 6 months, the government will make a determination whether we extend it, and if we do, for which of the goods that we will do. Clearly, I can't give a commitment that we will extend it carte blanche. We have to take certain issues into consideration, but at the appropriate time, the government will review the duty-free concessions and inform the country accordingly.
The fundraising effort by Dominica, you've stated that has gone very well after Hurricane Maria. Mm-hmm. Can you give us a sort of idea what that figure is like, if you have any figure in mind?
It's going over, now it's over $1 billion EC.
That's what you have raised?
Yeah, over $1 billion EC, at least commitments, pledges. We have received a significant number. I don't have the precise figure with me now, but we've received a figure. We've received some funds, so there's some funds in our accounts that we have access to. But at the appropriate time, we will, because we are now engaging a lot of the bilateral partners on a one-on-one on the pledges which they made, because some of them made general pledges to the Caribbean. We now have to determine how much is for this country and that country, how much is for Dominica, so we can have a better appreciation for the full extent of the pledges that were made in New York on November 27th. But just to say that we're very, very appreciative to the international community, the original partners, for their commitment. People are helping with the little that they can, and as I said, whether somebody gives $1 or somebody gives 100 million, we appreciate it the same way. Okay. Somebody asked about the coastal villages in terms of flooding. You have coastal villages like Collyho and Coolibistry. There are many homes in Coolibistry which will need to be relocated. There's very little you can do to prevent what has happened in Collyho from happening again. There's no retaining wall you can build or river retaining wall you can build to prevent that flooding. You see, that retaining wall will have to be as high as the church, or even higher than the church and so forth. And it makes no sense. So we have been looking at locations, and we'll be coming to Coolibistry to engage the community, share with them these locations, share with them what we want to do for them, how we're going to do for them. essentially it will be similar to what we're doing for P7 residents at Belleville-Chopin. Building communities. So they will have the health center in those communities. The police station will be in those communities. They'll have proper roads. All of the electrical lines and cable lines will be underground. The water systems will be in place. So it is fully that. There's many homes in Collio which need to be relocated. There's some, they're okay, they're safe where they are. We'll also be engaging Collio residents. We have started to do so on a one-on-one basis. But we'll be coming in there, sitting with Collio people, saying, look, there's landed platform here, for example. The government is prepared to build homes for you, for X number of you, and those homes will be at the cost of the state. Okay, so rest assured, the residents on the west coast of Dominica, where there's flooding and so forth, we're taking care of you. And similarly, other parts of the country, in the East Coast, and we'll be going to those communities, because the whole idea is to share as much information or all of the information as possible with all of those persons who will be impacted by government's decision, and do it in a very transparent way where everybody benefits. Those who really have to be benefited, those really who need help, will get the help.
Pre-Hurricane Maria, government was in a phase, so to speak, of marketing its CBI program, boosting the marketing of the CBI program. What's the situation now, and in terms of the impact the hurricane has had on that program?
Well, the program is very resilient. I mean, we were up and running less than 72 hours after the hurricane. I was signing approvals. We had we had limited technology use, but we were very robust system, and so there was not much disruption to the CBI program. And as you know, I traveled to the Middle East and to Hong Kong to reassure the markets of the situation in Dominica, and to hear from the stakeholders there and what we need to do to ensure the strength of the program. What we had done prior to Hurricane Maria is that we had introduced a new software system, a portal, so agents could upload the applications on this portal, and you could have remote access to the portal. So we were able to people were, even while the hurricane was going on, people were able to upload their applications on the portal, because we have a remote, we have different locations to manage this process. So we were people who at least had the ability to upload the applications, and once we had access, we were able to process them and to continue the process. So yeah, it has been we were back on our feet very quickly, and the truth is, this has been our what we've been using in large measure to respond to a number of the challenges, payment of salaries, payment of our debt, payments for works done, So we've been utilizing a lot of our own resources for these things.
You mentioned earlier on, Mr. Prime Minister, the 1,000 home project. You also dwelled on this when you addressed the media on Wednesday. But let's talk about government's public procurement practices and how that ties into the current legislation, the Public Procurement Act.
I mean, what I would say to a simple response to your question is that you hear some people saying the government is violating the procurement law. This is nonsense. This is totally not true. The government is certainly within the boundaries of the procurement legislation. The procurement legislation gives certain authorities in cases of emergencies. All of these people who have been clearing the streets, do I go and tender the cleaning of the streets and clearing of the roads? Do I tender, does DOASCO have to go to tender works to restore water? Do we have to tender to put a roof back on the hospital? Go for a process for weeks? Can people wait for weeks for these things? People need homes. Should I have to go for a whole process of months and weeks and even years to procure homes for people who desperately need homes? We still have people in shelters. We still have people whose whole complete homes have been washed away. There are people who have to abandon their $400,000 home and will still live with my relatives. What do I do as a Prime Minister? You see, But there's no violation whatsoever of our laws or procurement laws. Our procurement laws gives certain authorities to the Minister of Finance, and laws were never meant to tie people's hands. Laws were always meant to facilitate, and a law cannot be asked, and certainly the procurement law is not one. It provides for certain situations where of emergencies, and gives the Minister for Finance the authority to procure on behalf of the state certain goods and services that are critically needed. Do I have to go through a tendering process to buy food for people? Food for people when people desperately need of food and water, and we had to bring in large quantities of food and water. So which of the procurements people, those who say that the government violated, which section of the law the government violated, and which specific procurement the person is talking about? People mustn't allow their selfish ambitions to overshadow the greater good of the country. And some people who are criticizing certain procurement decisions of the government are doing so because of their own personal, selfish, greedy ambitions. But interestingly, that some of these very same people who are criticizing the procurement processes, when they are engaged directly with no tendering process, it is fine. It is okay. But if they excluded, they believe that they excluded, then tell me who in Dominica, let us be frank and honest, who in Dominica or the OECS have the capacity to supply us if 1,000 homes now? And it is something we're going to have to have a very frank discussion in this country, because we're going to need to bring in people to help us rebuild Dominica. We're going to need people. I mean, I'm speaking to contractors and they say, well, I just can't get men to work. I can't get men to work. We have to ensure that as many of the opportunities go to us here in Dominica, but we also have to set aside the xenophobic attitudes that are creeping in our country. You know how many of us are in people's country? You know how many Dominicans in Antigua and in Montserrat and in Nevis and in the United States of America, the United Kingdom? What if these people start saying that we're taking the jobs in St. Martin and BVI and US Virgin Islands? So let us not be xenophobic in our attitude towards embracing people who are prepared to help us. And because if we're going to rebuild and rebuild quickly, we have to ensure that we have the labor force, the technology, the competencies to do it in the time frame that we need. We do not have forever. We do not have for an eternity to rebuild. Time is of the essence. For many of the critical interventions, which the state must employ.
Can you bring us up to date on the situation with the parliamentary representative for Mount John, Ivor Stevenson? Is he expected back on duty in the next few weeks? What is his current situation? Ivor,
a friend, brother, he's back. He's been back here for some time. He's recovering. He's receiving therapy. He'd been getting the exceptional support from his wife, his children, his brothers and sisters, and so on, and those of us in the cabinet and the Labour Party. So we're there for him. Our first objective is to ensure that he is fully well. So there's no rush for him to come back to work. We are providing the oversight in the Mount John River Civic Granford constituency and ensuring that the people are provided for. We'll be launching a major housing project in those communities because Mount John and River Civic are badly hit by the hurricane. So we'll be building homes for a number of these families there and also in Granford. And ensure that they're properly taken care of. And we'll be providing additional support to the farmers there because they're very hardworking farmers in River Civic and Mount John Granford, especially dashing farmers and so on. So I intend to go there and to sit with them and to share with them some of the plans that we have for the long-term recovery. But certainly, in terms of Honorable Ivor, our preoccupation is to ensure that he continues to get the help at the optimal level that he needs, and we'll continue to support him.
Talk to Dominica's vote this week at the UN Jerusalem.
Well, simple. I don't want to engage in any debate on this. We're simply just going according to previous United Nations decisions on the matter, and respecting the international law. That's it.
On a lighter note, Mr.
But just to say, for example, on the port, quickly, I have to go to a funeral. I have a very, very dear friend who passed away. She's 97 years old in Soufrière, and I have been told if I do not come to the funeral, then she will not rest in eternal peace. So I need to be present. She was a very, very lovely friend, very, very lovely friend. 97 years old, and if you are loved by senior citizens, you have to thank God for that. And I see it as a blessing. But on the port, there were issues at the port. We've sought to address this. What I've done, I brought in port management, brought in the private sector people, brought in the shipping lines, met with them this week. We were able to identify some of the challenges, so we have been putting systems in place to address them. One of the challenges the port has is that 40% of the port space is occupied by empty containers. 40%. So we have taken a decision on getting this 40% cleared, so you can have more containers coming in, and we're increasing the time at the port in clearing, unstuffing containers and barrels and so forth. But we need to encourage persons whose barrels have been cleared and whose containers have been cleared to take it off the port. Come and get it. Because you would have realized that I got a note from the port, over 1,000 barrels and boxes and so forth were waiting for collection. You understand? So I have instructed the port to call out the people's names on the radio, so they can know that their stuff is cleared. So the port is doing so. But we need to encourage people to go there. Call your broker. Make sure your broker tells you when your barrel is clear, so you can pick it up on your container. So we're trying to see as much as possible to get people their stuff before Christmas. Okay, and the port will go on to work till 6. We're looking at working on Sunday also to allow people to come in to pick up the barrels on Sunday. So we're really pushing the envelope to assist. There was some breakdown in equipment. They were able to be fixed. The port is importing additional equipment. So we opened that in some in January thereabout. So we're increasing. They got new equipment. They got more forklifts recently. So there are challenges there, but I think we're working on them. But it is important for all of us to play our part in coming to clear our goods, the empty containers taken away by the shipping lines, and so forth. So things are coming up.
Allow me, Mr. Prime Minister, to lighten this discussion and wrap up, and to ask, what's a typical Christmas celebration like for you as head of government, a parliamentary representative, and a family man?
Christmas? Well, I have my Christmas party on my constituency on Sunday, and also we'll be having Christmas parties in different parts of the country. My wife is hosting a Christmas party for the kids in Rosa North, Rosa Central, Rosa Valley, Rosa South. Maybe about 400 children on Tuesday. Christmas for me really is very quiet, but reaching out to people, it's more of giving rather than receiving, and ensuring that people have the joy. We've been doing a program for the last 16 years, bringing toys in the country. That's from the Dominican Labour Party standpoint, and delivering to every child from 12 and under. So we'll be continuing that tradition and having Christmas parties and joy to the people. So go to church. I'm hoping all of you can go to church. Pray to the Lord, thank the Lord, and as I said, let us share the love that we have. We should not forget the true spirit of Christmas, the true meaning of Christmas. It's a time for caring, sharing, and fellowship, and invite some people to your home for lunch. I'll be doing that myself in the shelter. So do it yourself. If all of us do this, it'll be a wonderful Christmas. We do not have all of us have lights at our homes, but we have solar lights, and we turn this on. It's bright, and it's an opportunity now to be not to be distracted by television. So we can all be on the table together, rather than the children in their rooms with their plate watching TV. The son is in the room, the wife is there, and there's people there. So we all now can be together and celebrate the joys of Christmas.
I know you have to run away. What will Carnival 2018 and Reunion look like next year?
You know, the Ministry of Tourism will speak to the details of it. The Cabinet has taken certain decisions in respect to Carnival is concerned. So I'm hoping that the Ministry of Tourism and the Carnival organizers will give you a detailed explanation on the decisions taken by the Cabinet. But certainly we will seek to see on the reunion calendar what some of the celebrations we can have. Clearly, the kind of plan which we're planning on having, we may not be able to have it because of money. You know, it makes no sense you go and have an activity for $500,000 when you could build some homes with that. You could build a bridge in a little village with that. So we have to take some practical decisions. And I'm hoping that the Ministry of Culture and so on can engage the public, the committee, they can be engaged, and to see how do we review the calendar of activities for Reunion 2018, sorry. But what I would like to see is for our Dominicans in the diaspora coming down. You know, come Dominica, you know, come and make a contribution, whether it's 2 days or 3 days you spend in the country. All of those things help in the economy and in diversification of the economy, and of course the improvement of the economy. So, but we will speak to those details, I think, at some time. But thank you very much, Mr. Mapti.
I was going to ask a final
question.
Time for that. It has to do with Parliament and the election laws of Dominica. That was attempted a few months ago, and the Cabinet decided that at some point in 2018 that may be pursued. What is the very latest?
Well, you know, as you quite rightly said, it went to the Parliament. Had the Parliament approved this, we'll not be talking about electoral reform at this time. That's the hold up. The government has made all of the resources available. The government has provided the resources to the Electoral Commission to purchase the equipment needed for the. As a matter of fact, we bought a first set of equipment that had certain limitations, so we had to set this aside. That's for the World Bank OECS project, and the government procured new sets of equipment that provided greater flexibilities to the Electoral Commission. And so, based on advice from the Electoral Commission, the Cabinet allocated a significant sum of funds for that. We've also approved the additional staff for the Electoral Commission to facilitate the issuance of the national ID cards. All that is missing now is legislation. So, as far as the executive is concerned, that is the Cabinet, we have provided the Electoral Commission with all of the resources it requires to effect changes to our election laws. But without the changes to the laws, they cannot do anything. So the staff that they have no use for them now, because they're not doing anything relating to the electoral reform process. The equipment that they have is just there. They cannot use it because it makes no sense they go churning out electoral ID, national ID cards when they cannot be used for the election because the legislation is not allowing it. So we had the legislation, and I believe that is the most advanced legislation you would have insofar as ensuring a process of reform into election laws. These changes were endorsed and approved by international agencies who have assisted in the election supervision of Dominica. The only people who are opposed to it is the Parliament. So the Parliament has to do its work. And had the Parliament allowed the recommendation of the executive to proceed, and these were consulted with the Electoral Commission, so they were okay with the changes to the legislation. But when it came to Parliament, you see, sometimes people say they want something until it's given to them. You understand? When it's given to them, they do not want it anymore. You see? So, it's like, guys tell you, boy, it's scary, but guys should build a sidewalk on that side of the road when people walk on the road. You build the sidewalk, and the same people who tell you they needed the sidewalk are walking in the middle of the road. You see what I'm saying? So, it's something you do not know how to please human beings. And that's a challenge that we have on earth, that we do not know how to please human beings. But it's difficult. If your cat cries and you give it some milk, it'll stop crying, But human beings are different. So it's a challenge here. But thank you very much. All of you who've been following Facebook. Sorry I couldn't answer as many questions as possible, but next time I give you the chance, I will take only questions from the Facebook page. And the next time I have the opportunity. So we'll not take any questions from Curtis and Ilona, and others will take only questions from the people on Facebook who've been following us so diligently and so far. But thank you all. Thank you, DBS. Thank you, Channel 5 News. That's correct?
Yes, sir.
And of course, all of the media people who've been following us and who've been assisting in the dissemination of information. And to all of you, the wonderful people of Dominica, the residents and citizens, the many volunteers who are here, I wish you a wonderful and a Merry Christmas. And may God bless you, may God bless our families, may God bless this beautiful country, Dominica. And let us be positive. Let us ensure that our attitude is one of positivism and our commitment to our country and to rebuilding this beautiful country. First and foremost, the responsibility of rebuilding Dominica is our responsibility as citizens. People are here to help us. They're not here to do it for us. They're here to help us, and we must be seen to be helping ourselves and be engaging in constructive discussion and dialogue. I give you the assurances that in the new year, I will do all that I have to do as the Prime Minister to help the process, but it will require the support and encouragement of all the citizens of Dominica. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And this is DBS, and you were listening to